everybody, and welcome to the Her Hoop Stats podcast. We are here for a special edition of the podcast today. We have a special guest coming on. I'm joined today. My name is Chelsea Leite, and I'm joined by Maggie Vanoni today. And we're going to get into a whole bunch of topics kind of related around Connecticut, the Hall of Fame ceremony. We're going to talk about the whole Connecticut sale business. And then we're going to talk about the team itself and just talking about this season, talking about next season, draft picks, et cetera, et cetera. So first of all, thank you so much for joining me, Maggie. I know it's been kind of a crazy week, but so excited to have you on the podcast.
Thank you for having me. I feel so honored to be here. I'm excited to talk all things Connecticut.
Yeah, of course. So yeah, let's just start with the Hall of Fame ceremony because that's kind of like separate from the actual WNBA season. But you were at the ceremony last week where Maya Moore, Sylvia Fowles, and Sue Bird were inducted into the Hall of Fame, which is so exciting. So let's just kind of go through, what was it like to just be there in person? What was the energy like?
Yeah, this is my third time going to the Hall of Fame ceremony, and it is just a pinch me kind of moment. Like you're walking around and it's all of basketball's who's who's. Like Shaq was there, and Donovan was there, like LeBron James was there. A lot of people who just, are the it people in basketball were there. So it's a
Yeah.
very pretty moment. There's a red carpet. It's all everyone's dressed very formal to the nines. So it was just really cool. And everyone's speeches, whether it's this year or the years prior, are just moving and inspiring. Maya Moore had a really good one this year about togetherness and about how we're all on one team trying to make the world better,
Yeah.
and how that's her motivation to keep going and where she finds her competitiveness now, even though she's no longer playing. I mean, obviously she's no longer playing, but even though
Yeah.
she's stepped away from basketball, it was really cool to see Sue get recognized and Sil. I
Yeah.
was in Knoxville in June when they got inducted into the Women's Basketball Hall of Fame. Also a very special ceremony, but the Naismith is just a little more elevated, a little bit more official and fancy. So it was really cool.
Yeah, and obviously Sue and Sil had long, wonderful careers, and Maya Moore is a little bit different because she definitely could have played longer. I know there's this whole conversation about maybe she still could be playing, maybe all that, and does in your opinion, does the fact that her career was shorter than say someone like Sue Bird or Diana Taurasi or Sylvia Fowles, do you think that takes away from her Hall of Fame status, or was she just that good that even though she only played a short amount of time, she's still up there with them?
I mean, I think she was just that good.
Yeah.
I was talking to my boyfriend about this. I was like, she literally won 4 WNBA championships within her 6 years in the league. Like
Yep.
she won, and she on every level again multiple times. She had a good quote last week and where it was like she went to the mountaintop and she went to it again and again. So there was
Mhm.
nothing she didn't do, right? Like she won awards, she won individual awards, she won team awards, she had undefeated streaks. So I think, her stepping away, and she was 29 years old, right? Her prime of her career. The Lynx were a dynasty because of her. Um, I think it must have been very shocking for those around her to have her now say, "I'm going to focus my attention elsewhere." But I think that just goes to show you like how much of a just intentional person she is, and that's what gets you into the Hall of Fame, right? Is your intentions with either basketball, the way you carry yourself, your involvement outside of the sport, with the sport. So I think it just further boosts her resume.
Yeah. And let's kind of flip to Connecticut because obviously two of the three of them are big Connecticut basketball legends. And we're talking a lot these days about Connecticut as a basketball market, especially a women's basketball market. As someone who's there and experiences it, what makes Connecticut such an iconic women's basketball environment?
Yeah, I mean, it is for a very small for, like, one of the smallest states, it
Yeah.
is very prideful on its women's basketball, as it should be. I mean, UConn came in and just completely set the standard. Sure, Tennessee was going off before them, UCLA, but Connecticut has proven it can stay in this level consistently for 40 years now of Gino and CD. And so I think when you have that kind of dominance for such a long time, it's hard to argue there's anywhere else that has that kind of passion, and fans show up for it. Fans will pack the campus arena, they'll pack the downtown arena in Hartford, and then bringing in the WNBA 20 plus years ago, I think just further like further emphasized that passion and further just brought UConn fans into the world of professional women's basketball and the WNBA and how, yes, UConn is the best in the college game, but these players in W are the best in the world. They are adults, they're adult women. They're not 18, 20. They are this is their livelihood. They're very, very good. And I think you introduce people to that next step of, okay, you are college level great. Here's what great, great, great looks like. It's been really fun to watch the two teams. I've covered both teams year round. They have their individual fan bases and a lot of overlap as well. So I think it makes for a very good market.
Yeah, and, how do they still show up for players, say, like, Maya Moore or Sue Bird, who don't play anymore but are still such, like, icons of the state?
Yeah, I mean, they were both in town during the UConn season for when Gino hit the all-time wins record,
Mhm.
and, when Maya talked a little bit, when Sue talked a little bit, you could feel everyone's attention was on them, right? Like, they are celebrities in this world. Obviously, they haven't played in UConn for a while. They haven't played in the WNBA for 3 years for with Sue, but when Sue was playing the WNBA, when she would come to Connecticut, those games would sell out, the Sun would sell out. When Diana came, those games sold out. I think the what makes Connecticut fans, whether they're a Sun fan or a UConn fan, special is that they treat former players the same respect they treat current players. I think that's really special because a lot of times you don't really see that in college towns where the college person moves on and maybe they don't often come back or maybe they kind of just separate themselves. And the fan base here really attaches onto you and pours their fandom into you, whether you're an alumni or whether you're a current.
Yeah. I think we're in such, like, an interesting time when it comes to women's basketball fandom, and I mean, UConn especially, I think so many of their fans are young people, they're big on TikTok,
Oh,
there's
totally.
yeah, there's a lot of in my
Yeah,
Tik I sometimes I end up on that side of TikTok, I'm like, "Whoa, okay,
hard to
there's a
get
lot going on right
it.
now." Um, but yeah, so, like, I mean, coming off a national championship, it's something that obviously Connecticut is used to, but it's been a while, it's been since the
Right.
Brianna Stewart era that UConn has won a national championship, and it comes right on the end of this Paige Bueckers era that was huge for the sport, the school, for them getting back to that national championship kind of pedigree. So going in now to this next season, they're not only defending their national championship, but they're entering this kind of new phase of the post Page era. So what do you think kind of the focus is going to be going into this UConn season?
Yeah, I think honestly number one priority is to run it back again. This is
Mhm,
AZ Flood's last year,
mhm.
and if she had one of her best year last year with winning MVP of the Final Four. And if she can continue to be healthy, play a full healthy season, I think she's unstoppable. I
Yeah.
think we have not seen the best of her yet. And then you look at Sarah Strong, who literally is just a freshman and is one of the best players in the nation.
Yep.
And Gino always said, that was the worst we're ever gonna see with Sarah Strong, right? Like, she's continually gonna grow, she's continually gonna add stuff to her game,
Yep.
and so I'm really excited to see both of them kinda step into more leadership roles.
Mhm.
I think that with the transfers of, Sarah Williams and Kaylee Heckel,
Yeah.
it adds more weapons and more consistent weapons. Last year their roster, even this year roster is still fairly young.
Mhm.
Obviously, you have KK Ashley, K, or KK, KK Arnold and Ashton Shade,
Yeah.
who are very good defenders and ball handlers and scorers. But they're just juniors, right? And I think introducing them into the upperclassmen kind of genre of, okay, now you're a leader. That'll be really interesting to see how they can lead this group of young players, of newbies. We still There's still a lot of players who haven't really got their feet quite wet yet. Like Ayanna Patterson's been gone for 2 years.
Yeah.
Janet Elofsky only has had 1 year under her belt. So I
Mhm.
think getting more players more adjusted and getting more reps will be helpful, and having them spread out to fill Paige's role. Obviously, you can't replace Paige, but just to what can you do to kind of make up for some of the things she was doing.
Yeah, and I mean, such a big part of last year was the connection between Sarah Strong and Paige Bueckers, their kind of two-player game. Do you think that's going to be kind of given to AZ, or is that, again, something that kind of spreads out now? Or does Sarah Strong just kind of learn to play more of, like, an independent game?
I think it's just that connection we saw with Paige and Sarah. I think we'll have a version of it with her and AZ.
Mhm.
I don't think Sarah's an independent player. Like, she's so good, right? Like, she could
Yeah,
win a game easily,
yeah.
and she can turn on a switch, but I think, UConn really emphasizes that team chemistry and making sure everyone's on board, everyone has knows what their role is and knows how they can contribute and knows when it's their time.
Yeah.
And so I think we'll see a version of that chemistry with AZ and Sarah. I mean, people see it with Sarah and Sarah.
Yeah.
And I'm very curious to see how the dynamics work now, knowing that, Paige was such a presence, whether it was her leadership, whether it was just her scoring ability and just her kind of just I don't want to say like floor generalness. There's not really an adjective that describes that. So I think it'll be interesting to see kind of who picks that up and who can kind of bring that level of calmness and the level of direction without her.
Yeah, and I mean, we're kind of in this, like, deep into the transfer portal era of women's college basketball, and so far, I even after, like, the past few years, the way that UConn has used the transfer portal has been really impressive, given the fact that they had this kind of reputation for so long of just being like, people come and they commit for the 4 years and, there's a championship pedigree, but now you're kind of in this new, almost free agency period, and last year you saw, them pick up Caitlin Chen, and now she's playing in the WNBA. So of the you mentioned a few of them that they picked up in the transfer portal. What do you think this team seeks out in transfer portal candidates, and what do you think these particular ones are going to add this season?
Yeah, I think one of their priorities is just finding leadership. They find that in Sarah Williams, who is a fourth year, going on to her fourth year of college. Caitlin Chen, obviously her fifth year. Even before her was Lou Lopez Seneschal, who was going into her
Mhm.
fifth year. Dorka Juhas came as an upperclassman. Both of those, Dorka and Lou, both got drafted in WNBA. Dorka had a really good career, a really good season last season. Took this year off, same with Lou. Um, and obviously Caitlin is playing on Golden State. And so I think they really look for leadership, and they look for someone who can come in and know that this is, know what their role is and what they can bring, and knows how to jump in without needing too much hand-holding.
Yeah.
Obviously, they have, underclassmen of Kaylee Eckel who's coming in as a sophomore. I think I'm really curious to see what she adds, what she brings, how when she gets comfortable with the system. She played against UConn twice last year, so she kinda
Yeah.
knows them a little bit. She's from
Mhm.
this area-ish. And so I think that that'll be really interesting to see how she can just adapt to the system, adapt to the chemistry, and figure out where their role is. I mean, they have 15-player roster for the first time in years,
Mhm.
so minutes will be hard to come by, there'll be competition, and I'm
Yeah.
very excited to see how that kind of, plays itself out.
Yeah, I mean, the past few years have been absolutely riddled with injury. Like, unfortunately, it's been really hard to for this team to put together like a consistent roster. And like you said, this is going to be like the first year, probably in a while, that they're going to have that consistency. Hopefully, when it comes to games. And so, do you think? I mean, so much changes in college basketball. Year by year, but do you think this year's kind of them maybe going back to a specific brand of basketball that maybe is from 10, 20 years ago?
I don't know, I think Gino kind of this is my 5th season this will be my 5th season covering this team.
Mhm,
I think Gino's a really good master of working with what he has, right?
mhm.
These past 4 years have been, as you said, hell in a sense and a nightmare. Players
Yep,
going in and out. I mean, they had to postpone one game a couple years ago because they didn't have enough players. They've
yeah,
been down to 6. They've had, reserve starting because they just don't have enough bodies. And
yeah,
he's very tactile in knowing, okay, if I don't have player A, who can jump in and play player A? Or who can like what do I have that I can help strategize with
mm,
who's healthy?
yeah,
And obviously people are on minute restriction. So I think he's very good at working with what he has and now having a healthy roster to start this season. I'd imagine he's very happy about that and can experiment with a lot of different stuff, knowing that, hey, this person's now at full strength. Hey, now I have this person to back them up.
yeah,
Bringing in Sarah Williams is huge. She's a big veteran presence in the post, and I think that'll be really helpful since Jana's still fresh, and Ice is just she's going into her 3rd year, I think. I might be wrong on that. I need to double check that.
yeah,
And Liana hasn't played in 2 years, so I think
mhm,
now with a full roster, he can see, okay, where can I put people, and where can I slide people over, and where can people continue to get reps to learn.
yeah, exactly. I mean, the game that I always go back to was when Paige was listed as the center in This is like last year, the year before or
Yeah.
something, but it got rough for UConn. It was Paige going up for the opening tip,
Yeah,
and I was like,
she did for, like, I think 3 games straight.
"Ugh."
It was so
Man, I was
embarrassing.
like, "This is so rough." And I mean, I love that, like, quite often in sports, you don't get that, like, very satisfying end to the story because it's not written. It's,
Right.
you just have to go with what it's not a movie, it's not a TV show, and the fact that they did just that by being able to, like, write the perfect end to their own story with Paige winning that championship at the end of last year, I think it's just, like, so important to the confidence of this team and to, I think, just everything they do, like, making sure they continue to get recruits coming. It's such, like, a different landscape for recruitment now because there's so much parity in women's college basketball. So it's not that every top player just has a dream of going to UConn. I mean, you talk to the Sue Birds and the Diana Taurasi's and et cetera, and it's always been UConn for them, but it's different now. So I think that last season was just like a good reset for them, especially ending the Paige Becker's era. So I mean, yeah, it's an exciting time to be a UConn fan.
Yeah, I don't know, there's very few, I think, storylines in sports that end so perfectly,
Mhm.
with all they had been through, with all Paige had been through,
Yep.
her star coming into UConn was so high, and then she had those
Mhm.
injuries, when it was all of these, like, will they, won't they, does she need the championship to be on Mount Ru on the UConn Mount Rushmore? All these
Exactly.
things, how can you call someone a great if they haven't won? And
Mhm.
so to see them go out on top, to see her get the championship, I think, I don't think a script could have written that better,
Yeah.
especially since I think even mid-season last year, no one knew what was gonna happen, right? They had lost
Exactly.
Notre Dame pretty badly, lost to Tennessee. I mean, they kicked South Carolina and Columbia, but you never know when they were gonna season, and they were still figuring out the rules. AZ was out a little bit, Paige had her knee bump a little bit.
Mhm.
To see them come the tournament and just completely dominate, I think was just the perfect way for her to end out and her to go into the pros and close that chapter.
Yeah, and I think it just kind of alleviates some of the stress of even like AZ this year or Sarah Strong for the rest of her, UConn career. It's like, okay, you got that. It's like a check mark now. It would be great to do it again, don't get me wrong, and they're gonna want to do it again, but at the same time, like there's not that feel like there was so much pressure on Paige to, check
Yeah.
that before she went into the draft.
Yeah, I definitely and when we talked to the kids or the players in June, that's what AZ said. AZ said, that was super fun, but they're even more hungry now to do it again, right? And the feeling of like now you've tasted it and now you know how good it feels and how wonderful it is
Yep.
that you want to get back to that moment and you want to do whatever you can to try to win it again. And so I think we're going to see a very hungry UConn team. Not that they weren't hungry before, because I think they
Yeah.
definitely were, but I think we're going to see a very hungry UConn team um, that wants to celebrate that, wants to send AZ out now, maybe it's a two-time champion.
Yep.
Uh, I think that's gonna be definitely gonna be their mantra.
Yeah, and I feel like if she does get that two-time championship, it'll be something she holds over Paige for a
Oh,
very long
I'm
time.
sure.
Yeah, so I mean, let's kind of flip now to the Sun because obviously there's been, we're mid WNBA season for the next few days. I mean, it's ending soon, but Connecticut has been surprisingly in the news this season for a team that's kind of near the bottom of the standings. But it's been such a quick flip from, they were championship contenders just last year to now being a lottery team. Obviously, I mean, I'm in Toronto. I've covered the Raptors for a few seasons now. Covering a lottery team is a different beast. Like, it's, you have to have a certain amount of like motivation. You have to like dig really hard to find stories that people are still going to want to hear about. So, how have you gone from that flip to covering a championship contending team to now covering a lottery team?
Yeah, it's a big shift. Coming this is my 5th season covering the Sun, and
Mhm.
up until this season, I felt very fortunate that I always got to cover the NBA playoffs. I got to cover the 2022 finals when they played in
Mhm.
Vegas.
Mhm.
Um, and to see it just completely flipped 180 within an off season. I mean, you're talking about new players, new coaching staff. It's very challenging, and our readers are used to reading, positive, win stories. And so
Yeah.
trying to figure out how can I connect these readers to this team that is not winning, has a bunch of new faces that our readers probably don't know. How can we introduce these people? How can we make them care about them? Or just share their story. So maybe if they can feel connected even if the wins aren't coming. And so I've definitely challenged myself to kind of try to highlight different players who our readers know Leah Edwards, right? They know Leah Edwards, they know Tina
Yep.
Charles, but they don't know Sanaya Rivers very well, or they don't know
Yeah.
Layla Khan very well, and they definitely don't know Rashid, the head coach, really well.
Yeah.
So trying to highlight their stories and highlight this is who they are, this is their story, how they got here, this is their impact on the team. It's kind of how we're trying to keep readers entertained and keep readers like focused of this is why you should care about this team, even though they're not winning.
Yeah, exactly. And I mean, you mentioned Aaliyah, but that was a mid-season trade. And, for a lottery team, obviously their mid-season trades aren't exactly to push them for the playoffs, like a lot of, say, like Minnesota's moves were, or et cetera, et cetera. But, knowing Aaliyah Edwards from college into now professional, I mean, I know her from her being Canadian and following her, on the national team as well. What do you think the Aaliyah Edwards trade accomplishes for the Sun, not just now, but in the future?
Yeah, I think it's definitely future motivated. Having someone like her who will be on her rookie contract for the next couple more years
Mhm.
to not only grow her and develop her, but bring a like stable presence. Right, the Sun had so much movement this last off season. They lost all their starters. They had only two returning players. And I think having this core group, Aaliyah, the other rookies, Sanaya, Layla, Anissa, and Rhea all come in, and knowing that they're going to be here for next year is really helpful because then you have you have somewhere where you're starting, right? Like this
Yep.
season you were starting from scratch, and next year you're starting up here, right? Because you know all their abilities, they know their roles, they know what's expected of them. This is their rookie year. It's coming at them fast, not for Aaliyah, but for the others. And they're
Yeah.
a little bit more comfortable. I think that helps a lot, just with confidence, with system building, with personalities and chemistry building. So I think that was a really big get in setting up the future for even next season.
Yeah, for sure. And, when it comes to like we're in an interesting era right now with the expansion draft coming up like seemingly every year now for the
Right.
next little while. Like obviously we don't know if it's going to be the same rules as last year where teams get to protect, 6 players, but with a team like Connecticut where like you said they have a lot of rookies and so they do have a lot of, confirmed contracts for next season. Where do you kind of find the line between who to protect and who not to protect when it comes to an expansion draft?
Yeah, I think that's a good question. I like you mentioned, the W hasn't announced the rules yet for this expansion draft, especially since there'll be two teams picking, not just one. So I'm
Mhm.
curious how many people you'll be able to save versus not. I think you when you if I putting on my like very inexperienced GM hat, I would
Yeah.
assume you're looking at players who you can develop, who are personality favorites, fan favorites, who can bring you a fan who can bring you the fan passion, who will show up every night, who maybe, they're still growing, and you have the resources to help them develop. I think that's priority. And also
Mhm.
you want to try to protect people that maybe down the road you can get more from later, whether it's, putting them on a core tag, whether it's trading for them for something bigger, or just, someone that can define your core. Core meaning like core system, not the core tag.
Yeah.
So I think the mixture of things you look for, and I think it's one of those things where we'll wait to find out how many people you can protect, and that will probably determine a lot more too.
Yeah.
It was 6 last year, I think,
6, yeah.
and so, I mean, if you look at their rookies, and that's 4 right there that will
Mhm.
probably be protected, I'm assuming, and so that's
Yeah.
2 open spots, and it's a matter of what does something they can get, who do they think will wanna come back,
Yeah.
there's a lot of things going on.
Yeah, it's a lot. And I think another big conversation as we end the WNBA season is going to be coaches. So obviously Connecticut hired a new coach this year. So what has been your kind of, I guess, perspective of his year one? And do you think, maybe his spot is at risk, or do you think that they're going to continue with him for next season?
Yeah, I think he's proven that he can at least he is a decent coach, and I think that he's proven that he can take all these different pieces, right? They were all new. They at one point they had more first years and rookies than they did none, and
Mhm.
he can find ways to get them to buy in, right? And maybe it didn't look great the first half, 3/4 of the season. Those last, I would say, month plus of the season, they have really stepped on it, and they have really looked like a solid, unified team.
Mhm.
They beat Phoenix just last weekend.
Yep.
They've had really good wins, and I think you're starting to see that everything's clicking together.
Yeah.
And by continuing on for him for next year, would really continue to build those pieces and not just have to restart again from ground zero.
Yeah.
Especially since a lot of their roster is international, it gives them that connection to the international world of players, of, a familiar face, of, maybe when in free agency, they have more relationships with other people, other players.
Yeah.
So I think it's a very interesting hire. It was a very interesting hire, but I think that's proven to be something that they can build on.
Yeah, for sure. So let's kind of flip now and talk about the whole sale aspect, which I'm sure is just something like looming over your entire life these
Yeah.
days. So not to like bring it up, but it's kind of the elephant in the room.
Yeah.
So as far as you know, yesterday, I mean, you broke a story about the Connecticut, one of the Connecticut senators kind of getting involved in the situation. So what's like the current update? Like what's happening right now in terms of the Connecticut Sun sale?
Yeah, so again, it's a lot of moving pieces. As you mentioned, yesterday Senator Blumenthal wrote a letter to the WNBA, pretty much saying, in his letter, he claims that the W is interfering with the process of the sale. And his very first sentence he mentioned antitrust, a potential antitrust lawsuit. And so I think we're seeing that Connecticut itself as a state and as a body is serious about keeping the Sun, right? They're going to try what they can. They're going to really fight for this team. Um, Meanwhile, there's all these kind of different offers coming from different spots. The W has gotten involved with their own offer. ESPN reported that they put in an offer to buy them for 250 million from the Tribe, which we know is less than the offers from Boston and Hartford.
Yep.
So I think there's a lot of moving pieces, a lot of he said, she said kind of stuff. Um, and we don't quite know yet when is all resolved.
Yeah.
It could be tomorrow. I would imagine it'll probably be in a couple more weeks, when things kind of settle a little bit, when the Tribe has a moment to kind of make a decision for itself of what it wants to do with this team. Does it want to sell it outright? Does it want to keep some of the ownership? What does
Yeah.
that look like if it does? The state of Connecticut put a proposal together last week that we reported to buy a minority of the team, which will keep them in Connecticut, keep their home base in Unkinsville. So we'll see. There's a bunch of different options, but I think the Connecticut fan base itself of the state is very up in arms about this, and rightfully so.
Mhm.
This team has been here for
Yeah.
20 plus years. It's been
Yeah.
usually really successful, except for this past season. So
Yeah. Yeah.
yeah, so I think there's a lot of passion to do what they can to keep the team in state.
Yeah, and I mean, in your just, like, give me your opinion of, like, what do you think is, like, the best situation for this to resolve?
Yeah, it would be really sad if the W left the New England market. I think
Mhm.
that New England has proven it can have a professional sport. I mean, obviously, you have up in Boston a bunch of professional sports teams, but losing Connecticut's only major league professional sports team would really hurt the state, I feel like.
Yeah.
And, the state has had the last professional sports team to be here besides the Sun were the Whalers, and they left.
Yep.
So I think losing that presence in the state would be not detrimental, but I think that would be a big disappointment to residents, to, sports fans in general.
Yeah.
Um, so I don't know, we'll find out what happens, as this is gonna be messy as it already is.
Yep.
So I don't think that this will resolve smoothly at all.
Yeah.
I guess we'll have to wait and see.
Yeah, and I mean, one of the biggest factors with all this is, like, the changing WNBA market, the
Right.
idea of needing, things like team amenities, practice facilities, et cetera, and from your knowledge, like, do all of the offers for the team to stay in Connecticut, is that, like, a priority for them, is to build practice facilities and try and make Connecticut return to its status of a big free agency hub?
Absolutely. I think that has been the biggest not blind spot, but the biggest not red flag, but there's the biggest missing piece to this market is that practice
Mhm.
facility, right? I mean, it is no secret that Connecticut is the only WNBA team without a private one or without plans to build one.
Yep.
Right now, they share the tribe's kind of community center, which is really just a gym. There's some workout rooms. They have to share the gym sometimes with tribe events. It's
Mhm.
not really a dedicated professional level practice facility.
Yeah.
And so I think that is number one priority no matter where this team goes, no matter who buys into it, these players are at a point now where they have so much power and they have needs, right? And their
Yeah.
needs are being met at all these other franchises that if the Sun do not get that one piece, it'd be really hard to compete in free agency. It'd be really hard to continue have players stay for more than a year or so. So
Mhm.
I think that is definitely a priority number one.
Yeah, and I mean, based on the timeline, I mean, the Sun have kind of confirmed that next season is kind of business as usual, so anything that would happen would probably be for 2027?
Yeah. That's
Yeah.
what I would imagine.
Yeah.
If this team does have to relocate, whether it's, up the road in Hartford or out of state, it would take a while for that new market to have, stuff available, whether it's building a facility,
Yeah.
whether it's just branding, that takes a while. So I think we definitely wouldn't see this team, if it does move, we wouldn't see it move until at least 2027.
Yeah, and I mean, for those of us who aren't really familiar with the area, like, what is the difference between playing in somewhere like Uncasville to just moving down the road in Hartford? Like, is it a different dynamic, different, better facilities, better kind of like community aspect of being is it a bigger city, I'm assuming?
Yes, it's definitely a bigger city, it's the
Okay.
capital. Elginsville, I kinda describe it as it's, really close to the shore, you're next to Mystic, which is a very cute little beachy town, you're next to these little cute beach towns. Not a lot going on in terms of city life, it's a little bit
Mm,
more slow. There's some players who really like that, they like to be
yeah,
able to just kinda unwind and not have any distractions and
yeah,
go to the beach, go do stay at home kind of stuff. So, Tina Charles has said that she enjoys going fishing, so it's a lot more laid back. Hartford is also a little bit more. It's not your New York, right? It's not hub and bub. Maybe there's a downtown. There's really cute little suburbs off of it in West Hartford. You have the minor league baseball teams right there too in Duncan Park.
mhm,
Um, it's still not a flashy place, but it's maybe a little bit more going on. And you're closer to the airport. You're only a 20-minute drive versus now in Uncasville, you were an hour. So it
oh,
definitely would cut back on the time challenge or
yeah,
not time, travel challenge. So
yeah,
there's pros and cons of both. I think there's some players who really enjoy a little bit more quiet markets and other players who enjoy a
yeah.
little bit louder, a little bit more things to do. So it just depends on the player.
Yeah. It kinda just seems like logistically, Hartford seems like the best of both worlds. You stay in Connecticut, you have that kind of, like, familiar fan base, but at the same time, you're kinda, like you said, closer to the airport, easier to travel, maybe best of both worlds in terms of city versus, a little bit more quiet, but, yeah, it's interesting to see how all of this is kind of unwinding and how the WNBA has kind of inserted itself into the conversation, but at the same time, like, I can they really control what the tribe ends up doing, or are they just trying to, like, make their presence known?
So the W does get final say, right? Like, it has to approve whatever decision the tribe makes,
Yeah,
whether it's a full out sale, in location, whether it's just or relocation, or whether it's just selling a portion of the ownership.
yeah,
The league has to approve it.
mhm,
What I think is interesting is you're right, there's timing of this, right? Had this been 4 or 5 years ago when we weren't talking expansion, when we weren't talking this popularity boom, it probably wouldn't have been this messy, right? It probably would have been quiet, one and do or done really
yeah,
quickly. But the fact we're in this expansion era, there's so much demand for W teams, and W teams are going for a lot of money
yep,
that everybody wants a piece, and I think that puts a lot of pressure on the W, on the tribe, on just women's basketball as an asset,
mhm.
and that creates a lot of sticky situations like we're in now, and everyone wants to be involved, and it doesn't make it as smooth that maybe it could have been 4 or 5 years ago.
Yeah, it's an interesting place as well, especially given, we're in a battle with the CBA right now, we're in a battle, this
Exactly,
is this
exactly.
battle, like,
That's
there's
even
just
more
so many.
pressure.
Yeah, there's pressure from a lot of different angles, but it's also, like, we're learning more and more that, 1, the WNBA is a business, but it's also a growing business, and I
Mhm.
think that, at the end of the day, these teams are, like you said, assets, but at the same time, the players need to get what they deserve as well, so it's such, like, a very interesting, like you said, very messy landscape that we're in right now with this team that, I mean, luckily, we're not in a situation. I mean, I say luckily because I mean, nobody wants their team to be a lottery team per se, but, like, it's not like it's distracting them from a championship run, which I think is maybe the, like, silver lining of all of this is that maybe they can get this over with and just focus on the future, um, of the team, but, yeah, it's definitely an interesting situation that is kind of clouding over, like, the end of the season here.
Definitely, and I think it's hard too because I think this team was just hitting its stride in August when a
Mhm.
lot of these reports started leaking and coming out, and
Yeah.
your majority of this team is brand new to the W. They don't know
Mhm.
all this stuff. They're figuring it out as they're going about. This is
Yeah.
Rashid's first year as head coach. He's trying to figure out the landscape as well. And then you have a veteran like Tina who has seen this happen before, right? So I think it was. I would imagine it would have been difficult for those players to, kind of put this. cloud behind them and focus on basketball, and also know that your season ends. Like, you're not going to the playoffs. This
Yeah.
is gonna their last game is tomorrow at Mohegan Sun, like,
Yeah.
this is it. Um, but I think that the Sun announcing they're coming back for 2026 in Connecticut does alleviate a lot of that pressure of, "Okay,
Yeah.
we don't have to pack up our bags tomorrow, we're fine."
Yeah.
Um, I think that helped a lot to put that out there to ease fans and ease players.
Yeah. I also think it's so interesting too, just to kind of like end the conversation of like I feel like a lot of players didn't like compare notes very much until the past few years. Like I feel like Unrivaled was such a big reason why a lot of these players decided to leave Connecticut because they're like, "Oh wait, like this is I didn't think it was this bad. I didn't think there was such a discrepancy." So, I mean, yeah, I think it's just so wild to think that like these few factors like Unrivaled and, the amount of like closeness and movement we're seeing in the WNBA these days now has really allowed these players to see multiple different perspectives of what different teams can offer, and that has become such a huge factor in free agency.
Oh, absolutely. I think with Unrivaled, even though it's a completely different, league, it's set up differently, it's a different game.
Yeah.
I think players saw how quickly this new league could get all these resources and how they are quality resources,
Mhm.
and how the W, which has been around for a hot minute, some franchises do have that,
Yeah.
absolutely, but some don't. And I think it's a matter of everyone deserves that equal ground of,
Yeah.
having a practice facility, having an ownership that is committed and invested and wants to grow with the growing league. I think a lot of players there's with the CBA, it's all this mixture of all these, things happening all at once. With the CBA, players are realizing that they have the leverage right now,
Yep.
and that their voices are being heard more than ever, and that helps
Mhm.
with all these things of, demanding a practice facility, demanding better resources, demanding better pay. So I it's a whole storm, and I'm very excited to see how it turns out. I'm
Yeah.
very glad I'm not involved with it because that would be a headache.
Yep.
So I think we're gonna see a brand new W emerge next year, the year after. I think this is kind of the turning point of this league of how does it respond to this, all of this? How does it react? How do players react? And what does this new chapter look like? I think that's really gonna set the stage for just how big this league can get.
Yeah, for sure. I think, like you said, the leverage has switched, and now it's kind of the players who are driving in terms of, how big this league can get, and it's exciting. So, yeah, I mean, there's so much to look forward to in the future, and I appreciate you coming on and talking like Connecticut and all that stuff, whether it's college, WNBA, etc. But yeah, thank you so much for coming on. And where can people find your work?
Well, thank you for having me. It's been a blast talking with you and talking about all things Connecticut.
Yeah.
You can find my work on Twitter or X at Maggie-Vanoni, or CT Insider under our UConn women's basketball and Connecticut Sun pages. I cover the teams year round, so there's not really an off season.
Awesome. Well, thank you so much. And thank you so much, everybody, for watching. Make sure to subscribe to the Her Hoop Stats podcast here, wherever you're listening or watching on YouTube, Spotify, Apple, etc. And make sure to follow us on X, Instagram, and at herhoopstats.com. Until next time, thank you so much for watching.